Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to another episode of Sugar and Spikes. This is the fourth special episode that is a part of the kind of interim series between season 2 and season 3. If you haven't listened to the other ones, definitely check them out. You don't have to listen to them in chronological order, but just for a little bit of backstory for why this is different from what we kind of normally do here. Sugar and Spikes is generally hosted by myself. I am Des. I'm a serial content creator. What that means is, for both my 9 to 5 and all of my passion projects, I take complicated things and make them easy to understand, and God help me, interesting if the heavens part and I do my job well. I'm part of the Sugar and Spikes crew. The other half is Tammy, who's a licensed psychologist. This interim kind of moment is because both Tammy and myself, we've been hosting this wonderful, wonderful podcast for the last 2 years, damn near every week, give or take, for over 100 episodes. And after that, we definitely needed a little bit of a scheduled break. And a lot of people, a lot of podcasts will take some time off and not release episodes for a minute. No judgment. I couldn't figure out how that sit well with me, and since Sugar and Spikes is kind of my baby, it started off with me talking at a microphone at my computer. It leaving everyone hanging just didn't fit. So I found a way to make it work to give Tammy and myself a little bit of a break. And that's these interim kind of shorter episodes that are the Sugar and Spikes solo edition. We're going old school. Is to you, me, and a microphone. This week, what I wanted to talk about as, looking at the grand scheme of things, we're getting ready to lead into season 3. We're getting ready for a lot of changes, and it's awesome. I am excited, but thinking about all the things that we're doing as a brand, as a business asterisk, I don't know, like we're technically an LLC, but anyways, all the things that are coming down the pipeline, and with how season 3 is shaping up to be so great, I wanted to talk about kind of fear, because I've been putting off a lot of things. To be completely transparent, I've bulk recorded all of these interim episodes in the same evening, meaning I get to have a couple weeks where I don't necessarily have to think about the podcast as a podcast and can focus on Sugar and Spikes as a brand, which is so exciting. And not only as a brand, but also for the book, because we're working on a book. And as we're working on a book, there's a lot of fear because we're really close to being able to hit publish and getting that out in the masses, and realizing that we are a solidified podcast with a book coming out. There's a lot of fear. Like, just to be totally transparent and authentic, there's a lot of fear around, oh my God, what are we actually doing? And I think that fear comes every time there's a moment of growth. It happened to me last year professionally when there were some projects and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And it happened when I launched this podcast. Oh my God, what am I doing? Like, fear is a natural extension of growth, and it sucks. And it can get in the way. I think one thing is it can really get in the way of like your level of productivity and your level of how you show up, because like what if it doesn't go well, right? Or what if it does go well? Just speaking from experience, I know like looking at the book, using that as an example, or even this batch of content, I put it off for a while. Definitely the book just kept shoving it to the side because, oh my God, I may be done. This may be complete, and then it may go out to the masses, and then what happens if, you know? And I think really for entrepreneurs and side hustlers and anyone that's building something outside of a corporate job, or if even if you're in a corporate job and you're conquering the corporate ladder, and there are projects or, initiatives that you see and like you see the value in them, but you're also really nervous to bring it to leadership and things like that. Like there are kind of some key types of fear that I wanted to talk about and dive into why they come up and what to do about it. So the first is kind of this idea of looking stupid. Like, season three's happening. I'm an established podcaster. That's really great. And what happens if someone critiques me? What happens if, we don't get those reviews or the subscriptions, or we don't hit the number goals that we have planned? What happens if? We keep going, but I got so caught up in this fear of, well, do people expect like these new exciting things, which I mean season 3 is going to be new and exciting, so that's cool. But like what if people aren't as on board? Then maybe those aren't the people for season 3. You know, no one wants to actually no one wants to seem ridiculous. So if you're putting yourself out there, then you're doing that filtering, you're doing that refining, you're doing all the things to make sure that there's a good product out there that when your audience connects with it, like they'll know. So by putting something out there, if someone thinks it's like stupid or ridiculous, then they're not the audience for you. That's kind of the main thing with that piece. Which also goes to this idea of not belonging. Like, it's been a really weird situation where, again, like launching into season 3, we've done over 100 episodes. Would I identify as a like senior podcaster who knows about podcasting? No, like personally, I feel like it would be a shot in the dark. And I have 2 years of experience and I've done over 100 episodes, and I can talk to you about how to edit some things. I can talk to you about, working in audition. I can talk to you about like dealing with Libsyn and things like that. Um, so there's this fear of like not belonging in like the podcaster groups and things like that, and not belonging in like the author groups, like as we talk about the book and things like that. And any goal that you have, like if you're pushing yourself towards higher goals, it's going to be a group that maybe you haven't connected with before, and you're going to feel like you don't belong. But then when you look at like prior experience and the work that you've done to get to that point, like you naturally do, you know? Do I belong in an author group to talk about like the perils of publishing and things? Like, yes, because I've put a first draft together, I've edited, I've gone through the writing process, and at the same time, I can learn from people that have done more than me. I think that's the thing. Like, we feel like to identify with these titles, to identify with these, levels of success, we have to be completely there. Whereas it's really a ladder of, I've just gotten on, and this is how I'm starting to identify and connecting with people that may know more, that do know more, and learning from them so you can show up, so you can support your project the best way possible. Um, and if there are any folks that have like senior views and more experienced views and are like, what are you doing here? That's their own issue. It really is about collaboration and supporting other people so that they are making the best. And if anyone tries to tear it down, that's on them. Like, I get that that's easier said than done, but it's one of those things that, like, you have to grow into. You have to put yourself out there and develop that thicker skin almost, because the thing is that there are always going to be critics. Like, that's what so many people don't get. Like, it's the 80/20 rule, right? Like, 80% of the people that listen to whatever you do, that read whatever you write, they're going to love it, or they're going to at least think it's, like, passable, you know? They're not going to have an issue. 20% of the people aren't going to like it. A few are going to absolutely hate it. Like, we're talking about a general bell curve. It's a numbers game. Some people just aren't going to like it. You develop a bit of thicker skin and a bit more resistance the more you put out there. I think that fear of things, it is it does lend itself to, like, kind of the newbie element. Like, I definitely realized that my fear of stuff comes from the we're working on a book and I'm not as experienced with publishing a book as I am with a podcast, so the fear is taking over. So fear shows up when things are very new. Like launching season 3, if we were just launching season 3 without like any sort of book launch tied to around the same time, it would be completely different. It would be easier. But there's this newer piece that comes into play, right? Um, and all of this is to say, it's the search for identity. Like, now, are we a podcast? Are we a book? What is it? Who knows? We're gonna push forward. Um, and then that really ties to the like this other like major, I think it's like the underlying fear that folks can deal with, that folks experience, which is the fear of damaging like your reputation or damaging your credibility, like your level of expertise, right? So going back to the podcast versus author thing, like, yeah, we've done the podcast thing, but what happens if we release this book and things go really poorly? Then does that, you know, reflect poorly on us as a podcast? To some it may, to others it wouldn't, but it's this fear that I've been navigating, and there's been this general underlying fear of success that's been happening, and we've been putting things off and putting things off and putting things off. And I think a lot of people do it, where we get so caught up in the like what's the worst and what's the best, and we're not prepared for either. That's the main point. Like, when we come up against fear, we come up against something that we're not ready for. So, if you realize that there's this moment of fear, then the thing that has gotten me through like running 10Ks and launching the podcast and so many things over the last like 7 years. Like, I remember writing a blog about this when I was running and had a running blog like I was an undergrad, so 7, 8 years ago. And what the blog essentially said was like, what is the absolute worst that could happen? Like, think about it. Like, let your mind have a field day with what's the worst that can happen with all of this. Write it out. And then, how likely is that exact situation going to, like, how likely is that to happen? Like, really get honest. And then, if you're honest, your honesty is going to tell you that there's maybe a small percentage, less than 3%, I would say. But there's the possibility that that the exact situation that you've thought of could happen. What's that percentage? What do you do if that happens? What is your the world is crumbling and I need my go bag situation? What is your plan? Because coming up with a plan for that moment is going to give you so much power, so much more power than anything else could. Because once you have a plan for that, anything else is gravy. So, worst situation, plan for worst situation. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, but an idea of if the world crumbles, this is what I know I could do. Okay, moving forward. And if you're a type A, if you're completely, obsessed with doing the absolute best you can, then coming up with what is the absolute craziest best thing that could happen? Like, the stars align, God, the universe, angels, your guides, whatever it is that you identify with. They all smile upon you, and everything goes exactly according to plan, and you hit this level of success that, deep down, maybe you weren't prepared for. What do you do then? Plan out the absolute best scenario. Because there's that same-ish percentage, 1-2% chance of that happening, everything absolutely aligning. And then we're talking 95-94% chance of something in the middle happening. It's not going to be the best, it's not going to be the worst, but there's going to be something in the middle. But if you can handle the absolute worst, and if you can handle the absolute best, you're going to be able to handle whatever happens in the middle. And that's where we've been as a podcast and as a team of a handful of people, is navigating what does season 3 look like? What does season 3 look like as we launch a book? What does season 3 look like as Sugar and Spikes as a brand grows? What is that? And the experience so far has been a lot of fear, and a lot of managing that and walking through that and moving through in a way that, we can say let the worst happens because we have a plan. And if you can move through life saying let the worst happen, you're going to be able to walk through fire and you'll be fine. I know so many people, so many professional and personal development people are like, focus on the good. Focusing on the good is great. Really calling in the positive and playing up the good things that can happen. That's awesome. And that's really what I spend probably 80% of my energy, 90% of my energy focusing on. And we're fools if we don't acknowledge that things can go wrong. Planning for that. Don't get caught up in it. Don't let it take over. But planning for that and knowing that if that happens, you'll be okay. That's where the power is. And once you have that, you can grow in ways you never thought possible. And you can take on projects you never dreamed. That's what I got for you this week. Season 3 starts next week, which is so exciting. We're so thrilled to be entering this new season of change and growth for Sugar and Spikes. If you like what we're all about, if you go back and listen to something from season 2 or even season 1 and listen to a conversation between myself and Tammy, if you like that, go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes. Go ahead and subscribe. Season 3 is going to be absolutely insane. I can't believe the things that are coming up. I don't want to build it up too much, and it's going to be awesome. And okay, so leave us a review, subscribe, and share us with someone else that needs to hear what we have to say. Pick one, do all 3. I don't care, just do something. And if you have any feedback, comments, I'm available at sugarandspikespod.com, or if you reach out across any of the social medias, be it Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I am DezWMSMBA, DezWMSMBA. You can find me there, and I am thrilled and excited to hear any comments, suggestions, feedback you have. So, subscribe, review, share. That's your task. And come back next week for the launch of season 3, which is so exciting. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.